Today, we're going to talk about understanding business strategy and how companies position themselves against others from a competitive standpoint. All right, so first, what is business strategy? Well, a lot of people have a lot of ideas of what that could mean. That could be like, hey, this is our strategic plan of how we're going to build the business or how we're going to acquire customers. It could be like a plan. But when we think about business strategy and as it relates to analyzing potential investments or thinking about your own company and how you're going to develop your own business strategy, the way I like to think about it is business strategy is the art of creating monopolies. Now, in our society, monopolies are viewed as a bad thing, right? Um, you look at like our history with antitrust and all of these other things where, big bad companies have created all kinds of problems and we've gone after them. And so monopoly has kind of become this dirty word. But in the world of venture capital, ultimately you want to invest in companies that can become real monopolies. And the reason for that is because monopolies are able to charge higher prices and therefore gain higher profits in a relatively short time period. Which, as a venture capitalist, that's what you're looking for. You're looking to invest in companies that are highly profitable over the short run. And so you can invest, watch that investment grow really quick, sell it to somebody else or sell it in the public markets, and capture your returns. So, what does that mean? That means that you have to understand how monopolies are created. All right, so there are two basic ways to create a monopoly. One is through differentiation, and the other is through what we call a low-cost strategy. So differentiation is all about making your product different for different types of customers. So and adding a ton of value and benefits. Generally speaking, a differentiation strategy looks like a company with a very strong brand and a very high-end product. So companies like Apple are good examples of that. Incredibly strong brand, very high quality products, very different from a lot of the other PCs that are out there, right? One of the advantages of that is that by creating a product that's very high end, they are excluding themselves from a big chunk of the market that can't afford or is not willing to spend that much money on a computer. But the flip side is if you're a competitor to Apple, it's hard for those competitors to make a product that appeals to people that just love Apple fanatics, right? No PC that Microsoft or Lenovo or any of these other companies could make, in many cases, can woo somebody that's a huge Apple fan away. And that's the whole idea behind differentiation. You're creating a product that's different and attracts a different type of customer, knowing full well that you're not going to probably get all the customers. Now, here's how that works from how a company operates. What that means is you've got to provide better, higher quality products. Usually that also means that you're going to have a higher cost structure in order to provide those benefits, right? If you think about in the watch industry, a Rolex is a really nice watch. It's a very expensive watch. It also costs more to make that watch than Timex's, little digital watch you can buy at Walmart. Which brings me to our low-cost strategy. So a low-cost strategy basically says we are going to have the lowest cost of production to produce a good or service. And in that case, there are lots of ways that companies try to achieve a low-cost advantage. It could be that they have manufacturing overseas. It could be that they have a unique access to a resource or technology, or they have massive, massive warehouses and production facilities, so they're able to get massive economies of scale and drive down their cost. Ultimately, that strategy is all about getting to the lowest possible price point from a cost perspective and selling to as many people as you possibly can, rather than trying to segment out certain populations like a differentiation strategy would. Good examples of companies that follow a low-cost strategy would be companies like maybe an H&M, right? Or an IKEA, where they have spent an inordinate amount of time designing their products and how they get shipped and how they get installed and put together and all those different things to be the lowest possible cost, right? You can buy an IKEA couch that would otherwise cost you several $1,000s for only several $100s. And that's because IKEA is very focused on driving down that cost, right, for their consumers. Even though that couch may not be the very nicest, best possible couch, right? So that's your trade-off. Ultimately, what allow these strategies to become monopolies is that if you build a brand like Apple, it's really hard to attract away Apple's customers that are super loyal. On the flip side, if you have a really good low cost strategy, it's really hard for competitors to replicate what you've done on the low cost. If they want to do it, they'll have to build a massive facility. They have to ship all of their manufacturing overseas. They'll have to invest a ton in R&D to drive down their costs, right? It's really hard to replicate that. So a good example that I like to use is Delta versus Southwest. So Southwest is the low-cost provider in the airline industry, right? They don't offer meals. They don't offer the ability to book your own seat. They don't advertise online. If you want to book, you have to go to their site. They do everything they can to drive the cost down as low as possible, right? What that means is they are often able to undercut other competitors like Delta in terms of the fair value to fly from point A to point B. But that doesn't mean that Delta loses, right? Delta can still win. And the reason why Delta wins is because they have created a product suite that is really appealing to a business class flyer. And a business class flyer, they care about things like meals on the plane, lounge access, getting upgraded to first class, a lot of those things. And because their company is paying for it, they're willing to pay a higher price point for those things. It's hard for a Southwest to get access to those customers, those business customers that pay a lot of money, just like it's hard for Delta to replicate Southwest's low-cost strategy. Okay, so bringing it all together, it's not like you have to choose one or the other. And in fact, most great technology companies actually have both strategies at play. If you think about a company like Facebook, part of the reason why Facebook is able to generate massive profits is because they are winning on both the differentiation side of the business as well as the low cost. Facebook's business is fundamentally all about advertising, and they have to acquire data about you and me to feed into that advertising engine so that advertisers can send us targeted ads that are highly effective. That's essentially their business model. If you think about it from a cost perspective, getting access to that data is inordinately expensive for most companies. And yet, you and I have given Facebook, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or whatever it might be, a ton of our information for free, right? That's really hard to replicate if you don't have a similar strategy to Facebook. So they have an incredibly low cost when it comes to acquiring user data, which then they then feed into their advertising engine. But here's the other thing that's cool on the differentiation side is that because so many people are on Facebook and the network effects are incredibly strong, right? Like I want to be on Facebook because all my friends and family are on Facebook, right? They have so many people. They have almost all the people, right, on the platform sharing their data, which means they have better and richer data than anybody else. And so if you're an advertiser and you want access to those customers and that data, Facebook is really one of the very few, if only, platforms where you can tap into that, right? It's really hard for any other competitor to be able to try and compete and steal advertisers away from those platforms. Because of that, Facebook is able to charge very high rates to advertisers while paying very little for the actual data that is powering that advertising engine. Ultimately, what you're looking for as a venture investor is to understand what are the competitive advantages and this business strategy that a company is pursuing, and to feel confident that if it's a differentiation strategy or it's a low-cost strategy, that it's hard for other companies to replicate what they do. And ideally, you want to look for businesses that have very strong differentiation and very strong low-cost strategies in place, because in those cases, that's where you're going to get the highest profits in the shortest amount of time and drive excellent returns as a VC. Hopefully this was helpful and interesting. If you have questions, throw them in the comments below. Join me next time for our next episode of Venture School, where we're going to talk about what makes an attractive market size.